You know, people often tell me, you need a degree, you need credentials, you need someone to tell you you're smart. But I think that's all nonsense. Learning isn't something you get from a piece of paper, it's something you do. It's a skill, and the only thing stopping you is how you think about it. The first thing you need to understand is this. Learning is about understanding, not memorizing. You can fill your head with facts, equations, names, and dates, but if you can't explain them in plain language, you don't really know them. The real trick is asking yourself, if I had to teach this to a 10-year-old, could I? If not, go back and dig deeper. Keep asking why. Keep testing yourself. Don't settle for the answer that sounds right. Look for the one that makes sense. Next, don't be afraid to fail. You see, people often think that being smart means never making mistakes. That's a lie. Learning is messy. You try something, you get it wrong, and in the process, you learn the most. Every time you struggle to understand, that struggle is a clue pointing to your next insight. Treat mistakes like treasure maps. They show you where the real knowledge is buried. Another important thing, connect ideas instead of memorizing them in isolation. Life doesn't give you subjects in neat little boxes. Physics, biology, philosophy, they're all connected, and the patterns are what matter. When you start seeing connections, everything becomes easier, and you start to notice things that nobody else does. Curiosity becomes your superpower. Ask the same question from every angle. Ask why. Even when the answer seems obvious, that's where true understanding hides. You also have to be honest with yourself. It's easy to fool yourself into thinking you understand something, but you don't, really. Unless you can break it down into its simplest pieces and explain it, you're only scratching the surface, and that's okay as long as you keep digging. Never pretend, never give yourself easy answers. Be relentless in your curiosity. And finally, make learning fun. Not because it's a game, but because joy is what keeps your mind awake. If you're fascinated by something, you'll spend hours exploring it without realizing it. You'll remember it. You'll understand it. You don't need a classroom or a professor to light that spark. You just need a question that bothers you enough to chase it. So here's the simple truth. You can educate yourself. No fancy degree, no certificate, no permission required. You need only curiosity, honesty, and the willingness to wrestle with ideas until they make sense. And if you can do that, you'll understand things better than most people who went through all the formal schooling in the world. Remember, being educated is not about being taught. It's about teaching yourself over and over until you see the world clearly. And that is a kind of genius anyone can reach. Most people think learning means memorizing. They picture a classroom, a teacher, a stack of books, and endless tests where you repeat what someone else has told you. But that's not learning. That's storage. True understanding is something very different. You know you've understood something when you can take it apart, look at it from every angle, and explain it in simple language so anyone, even a child, can grasp it. Memorization might get you through an exam, but it will never get you through real life or help you solve problems that no one has ever solved before. The difference is subtle, but it's everything. You can memorize all the rules, all the formulas, all the steps, and still have no idea how things actually work. You might be able to recite Newton's laws, but can you explain why an apple falls instead of flying upward? Can you predict what would happen if gravity changed? Can you connect that principle to other phenomena, like tides or planetary motion? If the answer is no, then you haven't really understood it. You've only memorized a set of words. To understand, you need to test yourself constantly. Take an idea and try to explain it as clearly as possible. If you stumble, if you hesitate, if it doesn't make sense to say it out loud, then you've found a gap in your knowledge. That's good. That's where real learning happens. Go back, figure out what you're missing, and try again. Don't stop until the concept becomes so clear that it feels obvious. That doesn't mean it's simple. It might still be complex, but it means you can see it in your mind and explain it without hiding behind jargon. The trick is to focus on clarity, not complexity. People often mistake complexity for intelligence, but complexity is the enemy of understanding. If you can make something simple, you are closer to the truth than if you can merely sound smart. One of the most powerful tools in this process is analogy. Compare the new idea to something you already know. Use metaphors, visualizations, even drawings. Imagine it, play with it, turn it around in your head. When you can connect the new knowledge to your existing understanding, it becomes yours, not borrowed from someone else. It sticks. It's alive in your mind. You don't just repeat it, you can use it, modify it, and explore it. That is the mark of real understanding. Another thing to realize is that understanding is not a destination, it's a journey. Even experts don't know everything. Real learners keep asking why, keep probing deeper, keep testing assumptions. Understanding grows when you challenge what you think you know. And the beauty of this is that you don't need a professor or a degree to do it. You just need curiosity, persistence, and the courage to admit when you don't understand. Anyone can do it. It's not a privilege, it's a choice. So when you set out to educate yourself, forget memorization. Don't chase certificates or applause. Chase clarity. Chase the moment when you can explain something to yourself or anyone else and it clicks. That is the real reward. That is learning. And once you start thinking this way, everything changes. You stop being a passive recipient of knowledge and become an active explorer. You see connections where others see isolated facts. You see opportunities where others see problems. And most importantly, you begin to enjoy the process. Understanding isn't a chore, it's a game, a puzzle, a joy. You'll find yourself learning faster, thinking clearer, and seeing the world in a way that no piece of paper can ever teach you. Most people are terrified of failure. They avoid it, pretend it didn't happen, or blame someone else when things go wrong. But failure isn't the enemy of learning. It's one of its most powerful allies. If you want to educate yourself, if you want to understand the world in a way that sticks, you have to stop fearing mistakes and start embracing them. Every time you get something wrong, every time an experiment fails, every time a solution doesn't work, you are being handed a clue. It tells you where your understanding ends and where it begins. It's like a signpost pointing you toward the parts of the puzzle you haven't seen yet. Ignoring it, covering it up, or pretending it didn't happen only leaves you stuck in the same place, thinking you understand when you really don't. Failure teaches lessons that success never can. When things go right, you might think you understand. But often you're just lucky. You might follow a formula or repeat what someone else did and it works. But that doesn't mean you really know why. When things go wrong, you are forced to think, to explore, to examine assumptions, to question every step you took. That struggle, that frustration is where understanding is born. Real learning requires effort, and effort often means making mistakes along the way. The key is not to avoid them, but to treat them as experiments, opportunities to refine your thinking, to sharpen your mental tools, to grow your understanding. To embrace failure, you have to change how you think about it. Mistakes are not a reflection of your worth or intelligence. They are information. They tell you what doesn't work, what you don't understand, and where you need to dig deeper. Approach them with curiosity, not shame. Ask yourself, why did this happen? What does this reveal about my thinking? What can I do differently next time? When you treat failure like a scientist treating data, it loses its sting and becomes a pathway forward. Another secret is to make small, safe failures often. Don't wait for a major catastrophe to test your understanding. Experiment constantly. Try solving a problem in a different way. Explain a concept to someone else and see where you stumble. Tackle questions you don't know the answer to. Each time you fail, you learn something that no lecture, textbook, or certificate could ever teach you. You are training yourself, honing your ability to think independently, and building a mind that can navigate uncertainty. Failure also teaches humility and resilience. It reminds you that knowledge is not static, that understanding is never complete, and that the world is more complex than it seems at first glance. But instead of discouraging you, this realization should excite you. It gives you a reason to keep exploring, to keep asking questions, to keep experimenting. The more you fail, the more opportunities you have to understand, and the stronger your curiosity becomes. So, if you want to educate yourself, stop running from mistakes. Stop pretending they don't happen. Instead, Welcome them. Celebrate them. Study them. Let them guide you to the edges of your knowledge, because that's where real learning lives. The next time something goes wrong, don't curse it, thank it. Failure is the teacher that never sleeps, never judges, and never gives up. And if you learn to follow its lessons, you will move faster, think clearer, and discover truths that others spend a lifetime missing because they were too afraid to fail. One of the biggest mistakes people make when learning is treating knowledge like a collection of isolated boxes. Physics is here, math is there, Tory is somewhere else. And each has its own rules, vocabulary, and experts. But the world doesn't work that way. Nature doesn't hand you subjects neatly separated into chapters. Everything is connected. The patterns that govern one system often echo in another. When you learn to see those connections, your understanding deepens, your thinking becomes sharper, and the world starts to reveal itself in ways that memorization never could. Learning in isolation is slow and shallow. Connecting ideas is fast, rich, and infinitely more useful. To connect ideas, start by asking questions across boundaries. Don't stop at the obvious. If you learn about electricity, ask how it relates to chemistry or biology. If you study economics, look at it through psychology or physics. Draw analogies, notice patterns, and explore similarities. Many discoveries happen at the intersections, not in the middle of well-trodden paths. The world is full of repeating principles, from the way rivers carve valleys to the way markets fluctuate, from the way cells communicate to the way stars burn. Once you start noticing those patterns, everything starts to make sense, and new ideas come naturally. Another powerful approach is storytelling in your mind. Treat each field as a story that has characters, conflicts, rules, and consequences. Then look for where the plots overlap. A chemical reaction might follow a rhythm similar to population growth, or a mathematical principle might explain a physical phenomenon. The more connections you see, the more flexible your thinking becomes. Instead of memorizing a rule for one situation, you understand a principle that applies in countless situations. Knowledge becomes portable, not confined. Curiosity drives this process. You have to care about the relationships between things. If you notice something in one domain and ask, could this idea explain something in another domain? You are thinking like a true learner. You are no longer a student confined by a syllabus. You are an explorer connecting distant points on a map. Each connection you make becomes a stepping stone to the next insight. The joy of discovery multiplies, and the world becomes a playground of ideas. It's also essential to embrace a certain flexibility of mind. Don't let rigid rules or definitions limit you. Be willing to reinterpret concepts in new ways. When you start seeing similarities instead of differences, you notice patterns that others miss. That's where innovation begins. Connecting ideas across fields is not just useful for learning. It is the way breakthroughs happen. Many of the greatest discoveries in history came from someone seeing a principle in one area and applying it in a completely different context. Finally, when you connect ideas, your memory improves naturally. Patterns are easier to remember than isolated facts. Understanding relationships means that when you forget one detail, you can reconstruct it from the others. This is why learning in context is far more powerful than rote memorization. The world itself is your teacher if you train your mind to notice the links. So, to educate yourself effectively, never treat knowledge as separate silos. Look for connections, chase patterns, explore analogies, and follow curiosity across disciplines. When you do this, learning transforms from a chore into a dynamic process. You don't just gain artifacts, you build a mental web where each piece reinforces and enriches the others. That web is your map to understanding the world, and the ability to make those connections is one of the most valuable skills a self-learner can cultivate. It turns information into insight and transforms ordinary observation into extraordinary understanding. Being honest with yourself is harder than it sounds. Most people think they understand something, but when they really examine it, They're only skimming the surface. They repeat terms, follow steps, or mimic explanations without ever questioning whether they truly grasp the meaning. The danger here is subtle but enormous. You can fool everyone around you, and you can fool yourself more easily than anyone else can. Pretending to understand something is one of the biggest obstacles to learning. If you want to educate yourself effectively, you must face the uncomfortable truth when you don't know something, and admit it without shame. Only then can real learning begin. True honesty with yourself starts with asking hard questions. Do I really understand this? Can I explain it in my own words? What parts am I avoiding because they confuse me? It's easy to skip over the gaps in your knowledge because they're inconvenient or embarrassing. But those gaps are precisely where the most profound insights lie. Every time you ignore a hole in your understanding, you reinforce a weakness that will cause confusion later. But when you confront that gap directly, you illuminate a path to clarity. It might feel uncomfortable, even humbling, but discomfort is a sign that you are growing. The mind stretches when it's challenged, and honesty is the stretching rope. Another aspect of being honest is recognizing your own biases and assumptions. We all bring preconceptions to the table. Ideas about how the world should work, shortcuts we've learned, or patterns we assume must exist. If you accept these assumptions without questioning them, you limit your understanding. True self-education requires constantly testing your beliefs, even the ones you hold most dearly. Look at problems from multiple angles. Play devil's advocate with yourself. If your explanations only work under certain convenient conditions, acknowledge that. If something feels confusing, don't cover it up. Dive into it. That's where understanding grows strongest. It's also about humility. The smarter you are, the more dangerous it can be to believe you already know enough. Overconfidence is a trap that turns learning into performance. Being honest with yourself means accepting that you're a beginner in every new subject and a lifelong student in every field. It means being willing to say, I don't know yet, but I want to find out. That mindset opens doors that arrogance keeps closed. Curiosity thrives on humility. It can't flourish where self-deception reigns. One practical approach is to test your knowledge actively. Teach what you think you know. Explain it out loud to yourself or someone else. When you stumble, hesitate, or contradict yourself, you've found the weak spots. These moments are invaluable. They are proof that honesty is working, that you're seeing the limits of your understanding. Don't ignore them. Don't rationalize them. Use them as a guide to dig deeper. Each time you confront your ignorance directly, you replace confusion with clarity. Finally, being honest with yourself transforms learning from a passive act into an active pursuit. You stop pretending to understand and start building genuine knowledge piece by piece. You stop chasing appearances and start chasing truth. It's not easy and it's not always comfortable, but it's effective. Real self-education doesn't require certificates, classrooms, or approval. It requires courage, persistence, and above all, a willingness to face your own mind without illusions. Once you do that, every lesson becomes real, every insight durable, and every success truly yours. Curiosity is not a hobby. It's not something you turn on and off when convenient. It is the engine of true learning, and if you want to educate yourself effectively, you have to follow it relentlessly. Curiosity is what pushes you to explore questions nobody has asked, to notice patterns nobody else sees, and to dig deeper when the easy answers fail. Without it, learning becomes a chore, a list of tasks, a series of steps that you go through without really seeing the world. With it, every moment becomes an opportunity for discovery. The first step in following curiosity is to let it lead you, even when it seems inconvenient or unrelated to your goals. If something piques your interest, don't dismiss it because it doesn't seem practical. The very act of chasing that interest often leads to insights that are far more valuable than anything you could plan in advance. Curiosity is also about asking the right questions, not the kind of questions that lead to memorized answers, but questions that challenge assumptions, that explore possibilities, that force you to think in new ways. Ask why, repeatedly. Ask what if. Don't accept the first explanation you hear, or even the second. Keep questioning. Every answer is only as good as the understanding it creates, and curiosity keeps you from settling for answers that are shallow or incomplete. The more questions you ask, the more connections you see, and the more your understanding grows. Questions are the seeds. Curiosity is the water. Without it, nothing grows. Another part of following curiosity relentlessly is experimentation. Don't just read or listen, test, try, and explore. Take an idea and play with it. Break it apart. Combine it with other ideas. See what happens when you twist it or apply it differently. Every experiment, whether it succeeds or fails, teaches you something. In fact, failure is often the most revealing teacher of all. Curiosity is what gives you the courage to fail because it turns mistakes into discoveries. You learn to enjoy the process of exploration itself, not just the final answer, and that is a kind of freedom few people ever experience. Relentless curiosity also requires patience and persistence. The questions that lead to real understanding are rarely answered immediately. Sometimes, you have to chase an idea for weeks, months, or even years before it clicks. But each step along the way is valuable. Each detour, each false lead, each confusing moment is training for your mind, stretching it, teaching it to notice patterns and connections that others overlook. If you give up too soon, you miss the reward that comes to those willing to follow curiosity through the twists and turns. Finally, curiosity transforms the way you see the world. Ordinary things become fascinating. Everyday problems become puzzles to solve. You notice patterns, relationships, and possibilities that others ignore. Life itself becomes a classroom, and you are both the student and the explorer. The joy of learning is no longer tied to grades, diplomas, or approval. It becomes an intrinsic reward. Curiosity is what makes education self-sustaining. It keeps you moving forward long after formal lessons have ended, long after someone else has stopped teaching, long after the classroom door has closed. So, if you want to educate yourself like the greatest thinkers, you must follow your curiosity relentlessly. Let it guide your questions, your experiments, and your explorations. Let it push you into areas that seem confusing or difficult. Let it fuel your persistence and give you joy in the process. Curiosity is not a path you walk occasionally, it is a way of life. It turns learning from a task into an adventure, from a chore into a discovery, from knowledge into understanding. The more you follow it, the more the world opens up, and the more capable and alive your mind becomes. Many people think learning is hard, boring, or a duty imposed by others. They picture long hours of reading textbooks, memorizing facts, and jumping through hoops for grades or approval. But learning at its best is anything but that. Learning is joyful. It's a process that engages your curiosity, stretches your mind, and gives you the satisfaction of discovery. The moment you shift your mindset from learning as obligation to learning as exploration, everything changes. You no longer study because you have to. You explore because you want to. That is the essence of self-driven education. Joy in learning comes from fascination, from the thrill of understanding something for yourself, rather than repeating what someone else told you. When you finally grasp a concept, when a connection clicks in your mind, it feels alive. It's like a tiny spark of insight lighting up a dark corner. That spark is far more memorable than any fact you've memorized because it carries emotion, surprise, and personal effort. The more you experience that feeling, the more you want it again. And the cycle of curiosity and discovery continues naturally. It's not external pressure that drives you. It's your own desire to know, to understand, to explore. Self-driven learning also means taking responsibility for your own education. Don't wait for a classroom, a teacher, or a certificate to tell you what you need to know. Look at the world and ask questions. Choose the topics that excite you, the problems that intrigue you, the experiments that challenge you. When you learn for yourself, not for a grade or recognition, the lessons stick because they matter to you. Your mind engages fully because it is active, not passive. Every piece of knowledge becomes something you own, not something borrowed. Joyful learning also thrives on creativity. Treat the ideas you encounter like clay in your hands. Play with them, twist them, combine them in unusual ways. Draw diagrams, make analogies, tell stories. When you invent your own paths to understanding, you remember more, understand deeper, and see things others miss. This is how self-driven education surpasses traditional schooling. You are not following a syllabus. You are building a personal map of knowledge, shaped by your own curiosity and reinforced by your own insight. Another secret is that joy in learning grows with freedom. Don't limit yourself to one method or approach. Experiment with reading, writing, teaching, drawing, or discussing. Let your questions guide the journey. Follow unexpected leads. If something sparks your interest, explore it fully, even if it seems tangential. Often, the discoveries you make on these tangents are more valuable than the things you were supposed to learn. Learning becomes a playground, and the mind flourishes when it is free to roam. Finally, joyful, self-driven learning transforms your relationship with knowledge. It turns education from a task into a lifestyle. You start seeing the world as a classroom where every question, observation, and experience has potential to teach you something. You no longer chase validation from others. You chase understanding for its own sake. And that is the most powerful and sustainable way to educate yourself. Learning becomes endless, effortless, and exhilarating because it is powered by curiosity, creativity, and joy, the most human and enduring forces in existence. So if you want to educate yourself like the greatest thinkers, remember learning should be your adventure, not your chore. Seek joy in understanding, take charge of your own education, and explore freely. When learning is self-driven, every insight becomes meaningful, every discovery memorable, and every question a door to a new world. Education is no longer something you do because you must. It becomes something you live because you love.